Alrighty, Kris, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're glad to connect with you all today. This is going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully by the end you'll have some clarity into doing some webinars and launching. And I think we established this earlier, but just to make a final check, everyone can see and hear okay. It's like we're
all good. Yeah.
Good with it. Perfect. Cool. And got some cool bonuses for everybody. Brian, I sent those over to you earlier, so he'll have those for you guys in the group.
Yep. I'll send them.
And yeah, a little bit about me. My name is Kris Sharma. I'm the founder of WebinarGrow. We work with top SaaS brands around the world to create done-for-you webinar campaigns. Also wrote a book on webinar best practices called Smart Webinar Marketing, which you'll get a copy of today. And yeah, we work primarily with B2B SaaS companies. And just to get a sense of what you guys are doing now, if you want to just even maybe just type it in the chat, like, are you currently doing webinars? What kind of challenges are you having? Is it something that, or if you're not doing them, what's stopping you from doing them? And then we can go through that in the Q&A. Because I know sometimes it can feel like overly complicated, or like, hey, is this worth doing? How I got started, just a little bit of backstory. I was actually doing sales and copywriting at a company called DYL in Los Angeles. And here's a horrible Photoshop of our team as the 80s movie, The Outsiders. I think I was the Emilio Estevez character here. But webinars completely transformed the way that we generated leads and then we acquired customers. So it's not theory, it's all working in a SaaS context. And back in the day, years ago, our sales and marketing process was very old school. We were cold calling for 90% of our leads. And we would get a few referrals and we would do some industry conferences, but the bulk of our business was from outbound prospecting. What DYL is a phone system with a CRM and dialing software. So we actually used our own software to cold call for business. The downside of this is, you know, you're on the phone all day. There's no consistent lead gen. So you're talking unqualified leads. I actually lost my voice several times trying to sell. So even though we were doing well, it was not a sustainable process. And after we started implementing a webinar strategy, there was a massive transformation. So we were generating thousands of leads, both marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads with almost no ad spend. Like I'm talking $10, $20 a day. We were doing a lot of just cold email and partnerships for this. New sales went up 72%. So our new business coming in at the time was about 100,000 a month plus another couple 100,000 in recurring. And we bumped that up to 172, 175 almost immediately. And it stayed there consistently and kept growing. And the biggest win was eliminating cold calling for the sales team. So that was probably the coolest thing of all, is that everyone was just doing demos. I moved into demand generation and later on started consulting and blah, 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 started my business. But it all started here with that. And just want to give you guys an example of the power of one good webinar, just one. If you've got a good list and you do this well, this was a client, they were launching a new product and they had 1,000 opt-in subscribers from their content marketing that they were doing prior to launching. And they didn't want to spend any money on ads. So you can see here's some screenshots. They did 363 people registered. So about a third of their list joined the event. And then they had an 80% attendance. So admittedly very high. And let's check out what happened. So we got these 287 people on the call. What happens with the revenue? So you can see here, this was actually the day of the event. The actual numbers were a bit higher since their offer went for a few days, but we got $27,000 in revenue. And this is actually recurring revenue. They were doing like a quarterly launch offer. So you sign up for 3 months at a couple $100 a month. And they also had a couple of upsells. So when all said and done, about 100K in annual recurring revenue. So you can see the thing I like about webinars is you get a very fast return versus other types of marketing that you may be doing. Now, why is that? Why is it so powerful just to have some slides and do a screen share? What's the big deal? So the answer is what I call the 3 C's. The first C is the content. So a successful webinar is going to be sharing content that really speaks to your target market. You're establishing trust, you're a thought leader, you've got credibility. And the second C is connection. So unlike an ebook or a blog, this is something in real time, right? So we're all talking, hey, Peter's here, Matt's here, Ryan's here, Andrea's here. We're all connecting. If you've got a question, I can answer it right now. So you have a real face to your product. And the final C, and I think this is the most powerful one, is clarity. Because the cool thing about a webinar is you get the opportunity to show exactly how your SaaS will help them. They literally get to see your product in action. So they see the UX, they see how easy it is to set up an account, the day-to-day workflow. It's basically the power of a sales demo, but at scale. And so if someone says, hey, I want to see more of this, you can do it for 100 people at once. Your SaaS gets to do the selling for you. And the other cool thing about it is for webinars is you can use these at every stage of the funnel, right? So your top of funnel leads, they have no idea who you are, all the way down to people that are credit card in hand and just have that final decision to make. Everything that you're going to be doing is going to allow them to move through that buying funnel faster. They're more engaged. If you've got a high touch sales process, the demos are shorter. You know, we went from doing like 45-minute demos to 10-minute demos because they'd already seen what they wanted to see. And they, at that point, just had questions. They're like, hey, what does this work for my business? What do I do here? And the other cool thing about this is no matter what type of marketing you're doing, webinars can amplify your results. So you don't have to start adding on traffic sources. So whether you're doing PPC or cold email, referrals or content marketing, SEO, all of this can plug into a webinar. So you imagine this as a wheel. You can have webinars as the hub of this wheel. And so if someone's coming in from your SEO, boom, try them on a webinar as well. You don't have to start making your process more complicated. And so just to dive into our agenda, what we're going to cover today, some actionable stuff here. The first is we're going to learn how to create content that actually converts, and also the traffic sources to choose at your stage of growth. And then finally, how to build an evergreen engine of leads. So diving right in, let's talk about content. The number one mistake you can make with your webinar content, does anybody want to guess what it might be? Keep the mystery alive. Dun, 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 dun. It is being too product focused. So if you make one change on today's call, make this change. You've probably seen webinars that are product focused. You've done webinars maybe that are product focused, but this is the thing that really I see more than anything else. Like even though the content is good and their software is good, it's like the fundamental mistake is that you're talking about your features, right? So like, let's say, you know, hey, we're touring our new automation feature. It's really just a dressed up demo, right? They call it a webinar and they don't convert because the fact is no one cares about your new feature. No one cares about your product. And I know as founders, as marketers, we love our products. We want to show the world, but the audience doesn't feel that way, right? Especially if they're completely cold. Like if someone says, hey, tour my feature, I'm like, I got no time for this. They don't care about your product. They care about what your product can do for them. So, oh, and also if you guys are doing customer success webinars and training webinars and you're not getting engagement, this principle still applies, right? Even though we want to say, hey, I want to show you how to use this feature, you really want to show how this feature can help them. So let's just pivot that idea and make this shift to focusing on the audience. And this is where the gold is. So how do we do that? It's nice to say, hey, let's do audience focused marketing, but what do you actually do? So, I mean, we have a whole ideal customer thing we do with our clients, but in general, some things to keep in mind. Number one is to get as specific as you can, right? So if you're targeting, let's say, e-commerce companies, drill down further. What's the ideal company size? Who is the person that's actually buying? What's the role? Is it the founder? Is it the owner? Is it the marketing director? How many employees do they have? What's their revenue? What other traffic sources are they doing? Get an idea of that person as narrow as you can. And then once you do that, now you can start to ask the question of what they care about. What are they trying to accomplish with their business? What problems are they facing? Because this makes your content very, very tailored. And then finally, this helps you with the tone, right? Because if you're targeting CTOs, that is a very different tone than a sales manager. And a little pro tip, CTOs hate very salesy copy. So you can get very technical with CTOs versus salespeople. And then what we want to do is figure out how this plays into their transformation, right? If you imagine a puzzle of what this business is trying to accomplish, what piece is your SaaS? What can you do here? And then also you're cognizant of everything else. How does this fit into this desired state? So kind of improving that topic that we talked about, that, hey, tool or feature, now let's say, okay, we're going to shift this desire. We're going to shift to, instead of automation, how about closing 40% more mortgage leads with automation? And you can see it's not a big shift. It's not like, oh my God, it's a completely different topic, but it's very powerful. And I've seen this firsthand where I had a generic topic versus a specific one, and it was a skyrocket of results. So again, we want to keep our wins very specific. So instead of improving productivity, how about saving 3 hours a week on client invoicing, right? So think about that. And this also really can apply to all of your copy, not just your webinar, right? So on your homepage, in your email marketing, in your ads, see if you can get more specific. I think it's a very tough challenge sometimes, because we think like, what does our SaaS do? And I've seen people, like I've literally a dozen people in the last few months saying, oh, my SaaS helps you sell more. Well, it's like, who gives a shit? What, like, so what? But does it shorten my sales cycle? Does it reduce manual activity? That's how specific you want to get. And the second shift we want to make here is to position the SaaS as part of their transformation, but not the whole thing, right? That's the shift we want to make here, because sometimes we have webinars where people will say, oh, we're just the ultimate solution to all of your problems. And that's just not real, right? You want to establish trust, you want to have thought leadership, and give them best practices, whether they use you or not. And then show how your SaaS is the coolest thing ever, right? So I'll give you a real example here. This was a webinar replay. And just to point out a couple things so you can see here. Hey, here's our replay for last week's webinar with Keith Zabrocki. This is one of the most fun Allstate trainings we've had. So we were targeting the insurance industry at the time. And instead of just insurance agents, we actually went by brand. So I would do webinars for Allstate Insurance, Farmers Insurance, independent people, because I got very specific with the jargon I was using and talking about their specific desire. And then you can see here about some of the core desires: generating your own leads and automating your process. And then notice, I don't really say anything about the software, right? Hey, why move from internet leads to generating his own on Facebook? How Justin Timberlake helps him write policies. What the hell does that mean? He was actually using concert tickets as a promotional tool on Facebook. And then finally, like a one-click method for follow-up, right? So I kind of, the one-click method was part of this workflow feature, but I'm not like talking about what we do. Who cares what we do? So we want to focus on what they want. In this case, $85,000 in new business by doing this specific workflow. If that makes sense. And we can, if you guys have any copy, I'm happy to kind of give you some feedback live on this call. The question I ask on every webinar is, would my customers want to watch this? And I invite customers to your webinar too. Like, don't feel like, oh, I've got to parse out to only prospects. Bring everybody, who cares? Because if your customers want to watch it, you're on the right track. And this is some easy social proof too. If you have your customers on and they start posting in the chat about how much they love your product, that's money in the bank, because that really takes the pressure off of you and lets them just like, oh yeah, I know Joe so-and-so in this industry. Wow, he uses the software. It's amazing. So the point I want to make here is that great webinars are about listening to your customers, not them listening to you. So here's some quick tips for kickstarting, good topics. I mean, we could talk, for like an hour just on topics. But if you want to kickstart some topics, what I like to do is, rather than try to create a whole webinar without any feedback, you can start getting feedback from your audience early, almost like a Kickstarter where you're pre-selling an idea. So if you're crushing it with PPC or organic traffic, you could run A/B tests at different topic pages and see which one gets more engagement. Or you could do a poll for your customers, like hit them up in SurveyMonkey. Hey, what do you guys want to learn about? What are you struggling with? I love hearing from my customers in their own words. That really, really makes a difference. And then the easiest thing of all is just asking them, like literally one-on-one. If you have a customer service person or a salesperson and you're already interacting, hey, blah, 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 great talking to you. Hey, by the way, we're coming up with some new content for your market. Just curious what's going on with you? What would you like to hear about? We have a lot of experts that we work with. So, if anything you want to learn, you will be shocked at how good that is. Like the answers you will get from just this. Cool. So a little bit about content. Now let's talk about traffic. This is probably the other thing that kind of stops people in their track with a webinar. Where like, I don't want to do a webinar and not have anyone show up. So there's no real magic to it. It's the usual suspects for your traffic that you're already looking at. So for example, your warm traffic, like your opt-in subscribers, organic outreach, partnerships, SEO, and then of course, PPC. So we'll dive right into this. Your existing list is always the best place to start. So any opt-in subscribers you have, that should be in every single webinar invitation should go to that list. Now, we'll subset this a little bit further. This can be blog subscribers, lead magnet downloads, people that are trial customers that just never converted, or sales leads. Maybe they flaked on a demo or they did a demo and they haven't signed up yet. They're all fair game. And this can even be canceled customers. You'll be shocked. Like, hey, look, if they haven't unsubscribed, why not put them on the drip sequence, right? Anybody that's on a sequence is a candidate here. Because if somebody churned because they weren't using your product, like maybe they started using it, they're like, it's not for me. Excuse me. Then they get some new insight on how your SaaS can help. You just boosted your retention without doing any more work, right? So really dig into that, all of your lists. I mean, I was just talking with a client yesterday. We were going through his Infusionsoft and we're like, okay, we want to invite these people. And he's like, well, what about these people? They downloaded a white paper. Like, yes. Any content, blog subscribers, anybody needs that email. And then we have organic outreach. So kind of doing these in order from like simplest to most complicated. And so organic outreach is really, it can be cold email, LinkedIn messages. If you're crushing it on LinkedIn, you have a lot of presence there. Webinars are a great call to action. Social media groups are great. Facebook, LinkedIn, Reddit. If there's a message board for a specific industry, always a great place to do it. And if you want to get really old school, you can even do telemarketing. Now, I would recommend this only if you're already doing this. Don't just hire a bunch of telemarketers to call people. But if you have telemarketers and say someone doesn't want to do a demo, the second call to action could be, hey, would you like us to sign you up for this free webinar we're doing? And they can just sign them up themselves, like right on the call with their permission. So a couple ideas here. And I mean, I've just thousands and thousands of webinar leads just from cold email. If you have a very specific target market and your cold email is set up properly, it's a great tool to put in there. And another great traffic source is partnerships. So I love partnership webinars. It's a great way to jumpstart your list and get a new introduction to an audience with some social proof. So like, for example, complementary products and services. Let's say you've got a SaaS app that deals with Slack. It's like a Slack app, right? You can do a webinar with Slack. You'll be shocked at how receptive some of these very big companies are to doing partnerships. We did one with Wufoo years ago just because our product integrated with Wufoo. I was like, hey, we do this cool thing. They're like, oh, wow, I'd love to hear more about it, right? So who do you integrate with? What other products do your customers use? And it doesn't have to be just SaaS too. It could be other services, like, like say you have a lead management software, try reaching out to some lead companies. Does that help them convert more leads? If you can help them increase their business, it's a great place to start. Influencers are also great. So if somebody's got a podcast or a blog or some kind of thought leadership, see if they'd be interested in a webinar. You could even make them, an affiliate or something like that. Like a ConvertKit does this really well, where they have, I think, Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income and all these people as affiliates who have huge lists. And they just like, hey, use the software that I love. And then finally, industry associations are great. So if you have very hard to reach customers, these kind of professional organizations, they sometimes even offer this as paid promotion, right? So you can actually go and say, hey, we'd love to do a webinar. And they'll say, oh, we can do a sponsored one or something like that. Like we did one for construction project managers. So these huge construction companies and they're impossible to reach. Like they're just like, they were trying cold email, they weren't getting through. Nobody was clicking on their ads. Like they're just having so much trouble. But we partnered with this construction institute, got 500 people on a call, right? So sometimes you can shortcut a lot of that by just reaching out to the right influencers here. And those of you that are crushing it on SEO and you've got great organic traffic, this is super simple. The easiest one, I think, is like having a call to action on your blog posts, right? You can have a little box at the bottom of each page. Hey, join us for our next monthly webinar. And just keep updating that, or having them go to an on-demand training. You can have pop-ups on relevant landing pages. So if you have landing pages for specific industries and avatars, or even just a sticky bar on your homepage. So if you have something like coming up, like, hey, join our webinar next week. If they're already showing up and they're already interested, they're gonna check it out, right? So I would recommend building pages just for this purpose. But if you're doing this, add it on. And then finally, the elephant in the room is PPC. So instead of recommending specific platforms, I just want to say it really depends on where your customers are. Like LinkedIn is great for like enterprise, B2B, small to medium-sized businesses, or even consumer SaaS apps. Facebook is pretty good. And then Google ad traffic is really for like people with buying intent at the bottom of the funnel. Those kind of are the usual suspects for platforms. And then what I recommend too is starting with retargeting with all these. So if you're kind of new to PPC, I wouldn't dive right into top of the funnel cold traffic. Retarget the people you're already dealing with and make some money first, just so you can start getting something going. Because the fact is, if you're starting on a new platform, you're probably going to lose some money starting out. Like I would just say, hey, $2,000 is just going to go right down the drain when you're starting out with some PPC advertising. Here's an example campaign we did for a Facebook campaign doing small businesses. And so you can see we were getting leads from anywhere from like $7 to $12. And notice we also, you have our evergreen version of the webinar, basically an on-demand version. We did some as retargeting to a demo. So we actually, like once they saw a webinar and they didn't sign up, we would retarget that audience, and that was getting actual demos for a pretty expensive SaaS for $8. This I think was like $300 or $400 a month at the time. So you really kind of just want to target this and make sure that your numbers are right. So yeah, if you have any questions on that, let me know. But basically, you just want to do the math on it and make sure like, hey, how much is a webinar lead worth to me before you go down a new platform too heavily. And like I mentioned, retargeting campaigns are the easiest and cheapest, like literally $5-10 a day on AdRoll or Facebook and so on. Like, so if you're getting this other traffic, have some very specific calls to action. And I've seen crazy results just with retargeting for a revenue standpoint. And then finally, once the live webinar is done, this is where the real fun begins. So sometimes people think, oh, I did a webinar, it didn't work. That's okay. Because what we're really going to do is create the evergreen engine. And what this is basically content that generates leads after the webinar. Really, most of your money is going to come after the live event. So kind of, again, we could talk about this for hours, but in the shortened version, the first thing you want to do is push everybody to your replay. People that attended, people that missed it, people that didn't register, everybody, right? So always, always, always send people to this replay on demand, make it easy for them. And then you can get sales just from that. And then the next step is the Gary Vaynerchuk approach. We always know Gary V talks about hustling and grinding. He's also big on repurposing content. And this is key for repurposing kind of all of your content to generate leads. So to kind of repurpose your webinar from a high level, there's a few easy things you can do. The first is, like I mentioned, turning that live webinar into an on-demand training, right? So same way, Ryan, you'll have this for people. They can watch it whenever they want, right? That's the easiest thing. You can run traffic to your trainings, have it as gated content on your website. And the next thing you can do is repurpose that into a print form, PDF of an ebook or a white paper. And if you're doing a case study style webinar, you can turn it into a case study. And then you can finally break this out into shorter videos. So I've done this before where I've had maybe a couple webinars. I'll take the most interesting pieces of those webinars and make those smaller mini trainings. So you can have that out in the ecosystem. You can turn them into social media posts. You can turn them into blog posts, right? Add your H2 tags, get that same content in there, and you're not doing much more work, right? You've already created the content. Now let's get more and more leads that we can, because you really just want to meet people where they are. What do they like to consume, right? Do they like webinars, or would they prefer, an audiogram on Twitter, or they prefer reading a blog, right? You're going to get all of these different types of learners consuming this content in different ways. So here's a quick example of a repurposing workflow. We actually this webinar did pretty well. We had 246 people register, 120 attended, and I think it was like 30,000 in sales, because there's like a lot of annual prepays. So pretty good, right? So like, hey, we did the live webinar, we ran people to a replay, and then we repurposed that content into an ebook. So this was about the secrets of a top insurance agent, and then ran this through cold email. So like 1,200 word ebook, not that much work. We attached it to a cold email campaign, and we got 240 opt-in subscribers in a week. 0 ad spend, right? So almost as many as we did for the webinar. So this is the kind of thing you can do. And in addition to just getting new leads, it's also just nurturing them with new content, right? Oh, you missed a webinar? Check out this book, check out this blog, check out this video. And really you start to run traffic to the highest converting pieces over a long period, because you can run an ebook ad for months. You can run an on-demand training for months, and you can just swap this out. And so you can put them in your top of funnel PPC campaigns, in your cold outreach. And then you get a sense of what people like. It's like, wow, lots of people are downloading this. Let's stay on this track of this type of content for people. So I know I've been talking for a million years, it feels like, but before we get to the Q&A and your bonuses, if you do want some help launching your webinar, we have a couple of really cool options. The first is our signature program, and I'll put the link here in the chat. But basically, this is our completely done for you webinar campaign. So you get your copywriting, your design, your funnel creation. We can even co-host the webinar with you. So if that's kind of what you are, sounds like a good fit for you, I'll just put a link to our site there. You can book a call and check it out. Just for full disclosure, normally our signature program clients are in the 1 to 10 million ARR range. You got at least one consistent marketing channel and about 500 opt-in subscribers. That's usually the people who have the most success. It's not a hard and fast rule, but just to give you a sense of it. And then the other thing we just launched is our new consulting package. So this is actually the kind of a cool thing. It's brand new, so you're kind of the first people to see it, but you get our entire playbook for doing webinars. So all of our checklists, all of our templates, on-demand video trainings, and you also get some one-on-one consulting as well. So you really get everything here, and you can kind of keep this just for the StartupSauce people, but normally it's going to be 60 days, but for you guys, it'll be 90 days, and also knocking about $1,000 off. So I'll put a link there in the chat as well. So you basically, if you wanted to get started on that, I'll run kind of this promotion through Black Friday. So you'll basically get December, January, and February of consulting. So it's pretty cool. You get one-on-one help. We hop on calls, we do emails, you get feedback on all your copy. So it's basically the most impactful things we do. And just a little social proof. Here's testimonials. There's Matt Goldman at Churnbuster. We were thrilled with the results of our webinar campaign. This opened up a whole new method for generating qualified leads and connecting with our ideal buyers. Or my buddy Grant Miller from Agent Alive. He actually just got acquired, or not him, his company. He got acquired. He didn't get sold in the black market. He exceeded expectations. We've gotten high quality leads and generated a lot of income from them. Highly recommended. So yeah, if you got a question, you can always book a call on my calendar on the main website there, or you can just you email me at kris.sharma@webinargrow.com, and no sales pitch. You can hit me up on Facebook too, or whatever. And I'll give you an actionable strategy, and we'll see if this makes sense. And then Ryan, I know we got some bonuses for everybody. I think he'll get you those in the group. But first is a PDF of my book, Smart Webinar Marketing. It's a couple years old, but you'll get the sense of it. And then also a cheat sheet of kind of what we covered today, as well as some of my favorite tools, and some discounts there. And that is about it. So I'm kind of hopping the chat here and going to these questions. But yeah, fun to connect with y'all today. See Noel.
Fantastic. That was awesome, Kris. We've